Good evening, Valparaiso. This is Hannah Trueblood on WVLP 103.1. You are listening to Conversations live on this beautiful holiday Monday. Today is a special day. Not only is it a holiday, but you have probably one of the coolest guests ever on the show. He's giving me the side eye already. This is a really great episode, specifically because the person that is sitting across from me is someone that knows me better than I know myself, and I know them better than they know themselves, I think. And despite that, I find myself consistently inspired and surprised and amazed by who they are and what they do. And that person is my newly wedded husband, Sergijoe Villani, a true creative in every sense of the word. He was born in Vincennes, Indiana, spent a bit of his childhood in the Kentucky sticks, but eventually made his way into Lowell, Indiana, where he was raised and lived a lot of his life, until he eventually moseyed on over to Valparaiso and met the love of his life, which is me.
It's true.
He is a musician, an artist, a teacher, a really incredibly fascinating person, has been involved in tons of musical projects that we will definitely get into, not to mention all of the incredible artworks that he has been working on over the last few years. If you really want to go and get a look, hop in your car while you're listening to this and go to Joliet and Lincoln Way and take a look at his art on the electrical box, because it's there. And they're all over, have been all over Northwest Indiana in different cafes, exhibitions, all kinds of places. And beyond that, Joe is an incredible human being. He is my partner in life, my best friend, and he has such a unique perspective, which has been shaped by his upbringing and his travels and just generally love of learning. So that's exactly why I wanted him here. Because I know that we have incredible conversations all day and night, and I knew that we would bring a very interesting conversation to you this evening. So without further ado, welcome Joe Villani to the show.
Thank you for having me on this wonderful holiday special.
I know, it's been great.
Happy to be among the cast of great other guests that you've had. I've listened to every episode.
Wow.
So.
Well, how's it feel to be in the hot seat?
Oh, it's like nerve-wracking.
This is like twice in 1 week for you, too.
Yes. Anyway, happy to be here.
Yes. So I'll just get right into it. With the first question for you. What does a life well-lived mean to you?
Life well-lived. Wow, you're just jumping into the deep end.
That's what we like to do here on Conversations.
Okay. Well, a big question, but I would probably start with the fact that would be kind of subjective. I don't think that there is a life well lived in any kind of objective way. But for each individual person, be to hopefully just do what they enjoy doing more than 50% of the time at least. And the more over that benchmark you can achieve and spend most of your time, if you can get to 80, 90, I don't know if there's such thing as 100%, just kind of doing the things that you want to be doing and are feeling fulfillment from your efforts and payoffs from the challenges. A life well lived, I think, needs to have some challenge, and in there is kind of maybe some negativity. Not everything can be positive all the time. But if it's paying off in the end and you're better because of it at the end, and you're just constantly growing, not plateauing, I think you could probably say you got there by the end.
Well, and for the few short years that you've been on Earth, I would say that you're definitely in a life well living. You're doing a pretty good job of that, staying on top of things and never really falling too complacent, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit. But I would say that your perspective on that is a little unconventional at times. I feel like the standard of a life well lived is, well, you go to school and you go to college and you get a degree and you get the wife and you get the kids and the white picket fence and you work and then you die. And that was a good life.
Is that me?
No, you're like exactly opposite of all of that.
I see.
And I think that is something that's really fascinating about you. And so I want to dig into that a little bit and just kind of see where in your childhood did you really kind of start noticing that you see the world differently than the people around you?
I don't know. I think they kind of poke out at different places. You know, you get to these little points in time and you find out that, most people see it one way or kind of have this one way of going through. And within that, there's a lot of diversity in things, but to just kind of have this outside the box kind of view on certain things. I don't try to do it like intentionally and be contrary or edgy or something. It's just probably the way I was brought up. For example, I mean, I would say it's gotten more pronounced as I've gotten older, but all the way back to an early childhood memory, I remember standing up but not saying the pledge because I was instructed not to by my family.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
And well, as you know, but as many of the listeners probably don't, my entire family is Jehovah's Witness. So I was kind of raised that way and just kind of taught all these things that I considered to be kind of standard, standard Christian kind of upbringing, as many people have. But, they would kind of poke its head out in different ways, and you're taught from a young age to kind of not comply necessarily with everything, and that was, one small example, and it's not really a big deal, but I mean, to some people, it's a huge deal.
I would consider that quite controversial, not standing for the pledge.
Oh, you stand, you just don't say it, or
like
put your hand over your heart or anything like that. So it's kind of this interesting balance between kind of like staying respectful to, other people's outlooks and things like that, but also just kind of being brought up with some bravery to just to be like, yeah, I'm going to be the one person not doing this right now. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then I guess that's bled out into other little points in life where, I feel fine in defying the convention.
Defying the convention. That's good. Well, you kind of had a bit of again, the word unconventional just kind of keeps coming to mind for me, especially looking at the way they were raised. I mean, being in the witnesses and then eventually making your way out of it while the entire family remains mostly still invested in that belief system. Mm-hmm. What is that like for you, and where did that decision come from, being in a highly religious situation where both sides of the family, although you were raised in two separate households, they both had the same, that whole situation was the same in both, but you had two experiences in that. And so you kind of got to see different sides of that religion. And you made the choice to step out of that and into your own way of thinking. How did that come to be, and what was that like?
I guess it's like a two-parter. For one, I learned from an early age that, not everybody who believes a religion, I'll just, leave it vague open like that. It has nothing to do with witnesses, but just because you're a part of a religion doesn't necessarily mean that you're nice or, good on the inside. And I saw a good amount of examples of okay, this person's in the church and goes to church all the time, but in their daily life they're kind of pretty mean and don't really live up to this overall message. And I kind of just remember taking that in pretty early on and saying, okay, just because you think one thing, or you go to this place each week or whatever it may be, there's something a little bit beyond that may make you a nice person to be around. So that's one part. And then coming to the conclusion that I wasn't gonna be a very religious person or kind of asking these questions came, I think, at a pretty natural time. I feel like a lot of people start to have, thoughts of their own and like figure out what they're going to do. And that comes, I remember being, a young kid sleeping with my skateboard and then like, praying to God at the end of the night, oh, please let me land this kickflip. The very like shallow way. Later on in life, like kind of wondering like, I don't know, thinking on it a little deeper. I don't know. I think a big like a turning point with the whole thing came in my early 20s. I think when you're in your early 20s, you're out of school, you're kind of out of the direct supervision of your parents. And I think a lot of people kind of make those decisions and start to figure it out in their own way, whether they're going to follow every letter of their Bible or holy book, whether they're going to somewhat commit and be, what I would call your standard, person who has imperfections and, is okay with that, but still kind of believes in a higher being. I kind of went through all those questions, dug deep for a little while. I think going to college and reading all these books, hearing about all these authors and their philosophies and their wisdom over centuries and millennia kind of started to factor in. So many of them are very religious. So many of them would, in their own way, kind of go out on the limb. That's why we remember them, because they were kind of edgy for the time. They had a thought that was maybe against the dogma of the Middle Ages, something like this, And as you study that, you go from ancient Greeks to the, about 0 BC, things like that. You go up into what they call the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages. You go up through more the Renaissance. Beyond that, Shakespeare comes in around in there. Things keep turning, the philosophy of the day, people's understanding of religion and its role in your social life and its role in your romantic life, its role in society, its importance or not. Fast forward, through the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, things kind of blow open like they do in so many different ways. Learning all about that and kind of learning, these criticisms that come up over time, I just kind of like started to wonder about it more, really kind of reflect. And then I remember sitting down with a church elder, to kind of hear the other side of things.
Did you go to them and say, hey, I have some questions, or did they want to sit you down because they heard that you were...
kind of more the first way. I kind of sought them out, and I, as a, we'll call it young adult, wanted to like ask these questions to a person on higher up, a person that should have, a trustworthy understanding of what they're talking about. So we sat down a couple of different times, maybe 3-4 sessions, an hour and a half or something, and just talked about that. I think we were kind of talking about, what is a good person? Kind of your first question. I remember he saying like, if you knock on several random doors down the street from you, each person would probably say that they're a good person, So how do you know for sure? What was your question? What is a life well lived, right? And he kind of had his point, but I guess, each point had to come back to the Bible text. And I don't know, without that as a pretext, I found that we're kind of hitting a lot of brick walls. Like we can't really talk about anything without having this text that in general is mysterious as to even its origins. And there's this whole like fundamental level that you have to kind of dig in before you can just get to the next thing. Over those couple sessions, I kind of just realized I was, this is not for me. I'd like, even regardless of what the outcome of these sessions is going to be, I'm gonna like feel and probably live the way that I feel like I want to. And I figured out and know that it's kind of a philosophy. It's a theology. There is no one who's figured it out yet in the whole history of humans, right? We're all equally know what we know, and we don't know what we don't know, right? And it's not an achievable question. So at that point, I was like, okay, there's no body who's going to be able to say yes or no, or this is the right way, this is the answer. So at that juncture, I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna do me. I think it being raised in that way, like, definitely imprinted a lot of like moral ethics in my personality and the judgments of those questions, whether they be like, you know, people I know, or just you know, right and wrong situations from day to day, or even from year to year, we'll say, life decisions, things like that. So it's all in there. And I don't know. I just kind of more started to respect wise scientists more than a book that I don't really...
It's hard to cite the sources when you go back that far.
I mean, I suppose you can if you really dig in. You spend a lot of time, you dig your history, and you kind of separate out you know, what's fact from theory, and I'm sure there's a lot that I don't know. So just like the next person.
I guess we'll just find out at the end, won't we?
and I don't know, as far as like what happens after you die, things like that, like, I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, right.
Because if it's what I think, then it's gonna be whatever. But if I'm wrong, then I guess it'll be a good time to be wrong.
Right.
But otherwise, the ending might not be so poetic.
A little anticlimactic in your view.
It could be. It might be. But you know, I also know that I'm not alone in that kind of way of thinking. So it's not for everybody. It's not everybody's thing, especially living in this kind of, you know, spot on the globe.
Yeah.
Once again, defying convention a little bit with some of that. So
yeah,
I think is what it is at this point.
I find it fun because we have some really great deep philosophical conversations, because we both are kind of in agreement in just generalized thought on organized religion, and its impact on society and its legitimacy overall. And I'm more of a spiritual agnostic, and you're more of a just atheist.
It took me a while to be okay with that label. I don't like labels in general. I don't know if that's true, but we'll go with it. You know, probably closer than anything else I can think of.
Well, when you put a label on something, it makes it more concrete, and you're kind of, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but you're kind of a little bit more fluid sometimes on things.
Sometimes.
You just kind of like
I
to
try
be a
not to
little
be
more
wishy-washy.
Yeah.
There is a philosopher from like the 50s or 60s who said, you know, don't be dogmatic in anything. You know, and I like that quote, you know, don't be, I would think that fits me. I'm not dogmatic. Like, if I am 90% kind of within the box and do this other thing that's a little outside the lines, I think that's probably the healthier place to be. Yeah, it keeps you open, keeps you from getting completely boxed in certain ways of thinking.
Right. Well, I think that's a good transition to kind of dig in a little bit into what you do for a living and what you love to do in your life, because for a lot of people, and this is me too, I'm bunching myself in with this, is we feel that we have to find our passion and figure out how to make that work for our life so that we can rely on it, so we can just do it all the time. So we don't want to do things that we don't want to do. I don't want to work a 9 to 5 and then go do my passions afterwards. I just want to live my passionate life all the time. But for you have kind of sidestepped that a little bit and have kind of leaned more into the concept of, okay, between these hours I am working, and this work is work, and then after hours I am me, and I work so that I can be me. So talk a little bit about how that came to be, where this career that you have chosen has come from, and just your general outlook on that lifestyle?
Well, I think my balance that I currently have right now between, kind of passion and kind of paying the bills in business, I will call it, just comes from various experiences. I've been lucky to have jobs which were my passion. Mm-hmm. I think the most obvious for me is being a guitar teacher. And that one changed me for the good.
You were how old when you started doing
trajectory. That? So I got into music and started really, 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 really practicing, and got good enough to where I could, be good enough to kind of show other people how to get started. And I was still pretty young. I was like 17, definitely 17 when I was taking on some good amount of students. And, some of my students were significantly older than me, retired guys, and everybody kind of in between, all the way down to just little kid beginners. I got into that because I loved music, loved guitar, and I knew that I just, do have a good amount of patience, like to show people things and then watch them kind of get it and succeed in it, and that feels good. And through teaching early on, and that was a great alternative to other jobs I'd had, just your standard teenage jobs, cooking at KFC, bussing tables.
Love it.
Got a little bit of that, just jobs. And got a chance to teach guitar. I was like, wow, it actually pays better and is significantly more fun, and you go home at the end of the night and you feel like you helped spread creativity rather than, fed chicken legs to people and covered in chicken guts.
Great.
Yeah, and I and I learned early on. I was like, there's definitely one night. It was a really rough night at KFC, and I was like crying because I was just like covered in filth and
I can't take it anymore.
Covered in burns and all this stuff, and I was like, this is terrible. And my paycheck was like $90. It was
yep.
It was rough. So yeah, I taught guitar, and it wasn't too long. Couple of years of that, 18, 19, graduated high school, worked my way kind of through high school doing that, which is a pretty independent kind of thing to do too. You're kind of doing it on your own in a way. And then went to school to be an artist at Columbia. Basically I got a good amount of loans and stuff at first, but then I don't know. I either didn't apply for the next one or it was going to be like an astronomical bill. And I was like, this is not sustainable. Mm-hmm. So I very much appreciate my time there, but it wasn't something I was going to, continue to do. So I kind of pumped the brakes for a minute and reflected, came out to going to school to be a teacher because it was something that I had already been doing. I really enjoyed watching kids grow. I felt that I was good at it. I kept my students and they grew. So that was great. And, a lot of little thinking ahead kind of equations went into making that decision. I was like, okay, well, what's the obvious thing? I could be an art teacher or I could be a music teacher. And I was like, I don't really want to do that because they're cutting arts programs just left and right all the way. They always have been. Like Mr. Holland's Opus, which was made in like the early 90s or 80s, is about, his struggling music program. And in that movie, he's like, he never gets to work on his music because he always has to work on the school's music. And same for art. To this day, I would love to be an art teacher, but it's just not quite as secure of a job. So I kind of thought of it, and I liked films and always have loved movies. There's no real, in this time, this was like 2008, there wasn't really a great film literature department in a lot of places. So I ended up in the English department, which was, literature, films, media, kind of looking beyond messaging, marketing, could be anything, Mm-hmm. And that's how I kind of got started. And part of the factors there were like, okay, I get to be a teacher, super stable job, kind of like decent job security there. You get some retirement benefits going on. You know when you're working. You'll never work a weekend. You know, you get time off. And I saw a lot of my friends, and I knew a lot of people who worked a lot. And I just that's fine, you know, working is part of life, and that's what you do, and it can be rewarding, but I didn't want to work all the time. So that also kind of factored in. I was like, well, you know, as far as a working, dependable job, being a teacher, you're only working about 185 days a year, which is like ridiculous when you compare it to some other careers.
Especially
and you definitely,
looking at KFC.
For sure. And you put in your time, and it you know, that time off is definitely needed because the job is intense once you get rolling.
Yeah, those days are like sometimes one day feels like a whole week.
I can. So. And then there's no getting out of it. You go tomorrow, you know, and you got to be ready every day. But every day's new. The kids are always rotating. It's never quite stagnant, you know. So it's like, yes, when I'm at work, it's work. But there's a whole lot of like good silver linings to the job in itself too. So it's not like a miserable thing. But it is in that way a little unconventional also. I do realize there are people out there, many teachers who like when they were kids, they wanted to be teachers. That is their passion in life. All they ever wanted to do was teach. And now that they have a classroom and a class of their own, they could not be happier. That is very awesome, but I don't love it. Like, I will be honest, I don't love it that much. But it is a nice job, and I do appreciate it. And I learn things all the time, and you stay fresh, and you watch people grow, and I still love that aspect of it. But it's not the only thing in my life. I like to have things that are happening beyond just what you do for a living. I don't like it to define your whole personality. At least that's for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're here at WVLP Conversations. This is Hannah Villani. I think I might have said Hannah Trueblood when we first started this. I'm Hannah Villani now, nice. And we have Joe Villani. And we were just digging into his teaching career and his art and his music and why he chose not to pursue the starving artist track and kind of settle into a more consistent earning opportunity. And I think the next question for that would be, yes, you're not like totally like, it's not your entire personality. You don't hate it. You kind of sit somewhere in that comfortable middle when it comes to that. But comparing it against your creativity, do you feel like this helps you, compartmentalizing it like that, do you think that it helps you sustain your creativity and kind of make music and make art and do your bands and do these things? Or do you feel that at the end of the day, that 9 to 5 does kind of stifle some of that creativity?
It's a balance, but I really do think it's almost needed and necessary. Like, I have some friends who have to be creative all the time, and they've, you know, laid their lives out and chosen that, and that has definite appeal to be doing that all the time. But for me, it's I can do that if I wanted to. I could just, you know, drive painting and music all day and all night, every night. But it wears on you. It gets tired. Sometimes you have a sore throat. Sometimes you've been playing so much that the creative well is a little dry. And it feels, to me, a little painful to turn it on anyway. You know, you're like, well, there it is. And, you know, I think you can be dulled by it. You got to have a good amount of endurance. It's tough. I've gone through spells where it's been real heavy, you know, lots of gigs to prepare for, or lots of music happening, or, you know, some painting deadlines to meet, and you got to paint. And that drives you further than you would go. But I like being able to do it just as much as I would like to. And if it becomes overwhelming, I can kind of dial back, and like have a little bit of a normal rhythm of life. It also affords me, you know, guaranteed time to work on those things, and, you know, enough money to like travel a little bit, and enough time off to travel and like go see things, experience things that you might not if you're just gigging and working all the time. And then those make really great topics and fuel inspiration for, those creative moments. And it's all a juggling act. As soon as I, do too much of one thing, then the other needs attention. And maybe it's a little bit of ADD built in into my life, but I like to kind of rotate around, work on something really hard for a while, and kind of move to the next thing. It's a small rotation of just 3 or 4, passions that I have, and they kind of feed off of each other. They're not working in isolation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to watch. I mean, I'm in the house and I see you doing your music and working on your music and working on other people's music and painting and doing artwork that you want to do and working on commissions that people have hired you to do. And, when you're talking to a musician, 9 times out of 10, that musician is going to just be a musician. And when you're talking to an artist, 9 times out of 10, they're going to just be an artist. And it's more rare to run into somebody who is able to be skilled and talented in 2 of those mediums. And I really love the way that you have been able to kind of seamlessly blend the 2 together, because you're able to, through your schedule, of course, being able to do both. And when your music is slow, you can pick up the brush and vice versa. But you've also recently done some cover art for other local musicians. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about the inspiration behind that and what that feels like to kind of combine your 2 worlds.
It took a while to kind of find it, and I'm aware enough to try to not be a master of none. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, spread yourself too thin. Like, I'm sure that if I just studied music solely and, just pushed my foot on the gas only in that direction, yeah, I'd be a better musician and I'd have more to show for it. But, without spreading myself too thin and kind of like working on it over the last few years, there was a huge, probably 10 years where I didn't paint a single painting. I maybe just did a couple of drawings. So I still feel like I'm new to that, and there's 10 years to make up for there and like a million ideas. So I am happy with taking my time to just flesh out each one. Mm-hmm. And I've always played music since I started. I never have stopped. And as I started to kind of do both, and kind of just, say the obvious thing. Okay, it's music and artworks. And I know it's 2 things, and it's not as concise as our social media world would like it to be sometimes. But I was like, that's not too much, and maybe we can just kind of package it that way. And yeah, the 2 play well together, and I feel like that's my thing, mm-hmm. At least around here. There's other people who do that for sure. Joni Mitchell is inspiration to me. Great beyond the box thinker in her songwriting, and then paints all her own album covers, or at least a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And just talented in all kinds of ways, and that's cool. And those are the people who are very inspiring to me also. But yeah, around here there's a whole lot of really, really talented musicians. In a way, it's tough to poke out, even if you've been doing it for as long as I have. And that's cool. And doing the paint has helped me embrace just doing my own thing with music. I don't spend a lot of time looking at other people's paintings and say, oh, I'm gonna, I want to be like that. I just kind of do my own. I feel a good amount of autonomy. There's very little compromise, mm-hmm. For paintings. I get to just kind of do what I want to do. And that has inspired my music to be like, hey, maybe you could just do whatever you want to do. And that's cool. And I'm not quite where I want to be with all of that yet, but it's, at least my compass is pointing maybe in the right direction. And time passes quickly. And all of a sudden, a few years go by, and I went from not even 10 paintings to over almost 40 or more. And I'll do the same thing here, hopefully, with music very soon. Like, the recordings have begun. And,
it's happening.
That's the way things work in my world. Like, I didn't forget. I just didn't do it yet.
You're definitely a person that sees things through.
Try to.
Connecting back to I mean, you had said, you're like, oh man, I would always love to, thought it'd be so cool to paint skateboards. And then you, like, years and years later in your life, a skate shop popped up across the street from your house, and now you're a featured artist on their skate decks. And always thought it'd be cool to do the music cover art. And then here you are you've done what, 4, 5 of
covers?
those?
Yeah, I mean, maybe more.
5
more.
at
6,
least?
7. I don't know if I haven't counted, but I think a number of them now.
You said my ultimate dream would be to have an exhibition at Uptown, and then a couple of years ago it happens.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a quality about you that's very admirable, and is one of the reasons why you're such just a likable person, is because when you say you're going to do something, you do it.
I think you helped me with that, and you taught me that when you just start saying it, somehow that means you're doing it. Yeah. And I've adopted that a little bit. I say, I'm going to make a Sergijoe and Artworks, music and artworks page together, or I'm gonna make a demo, or I'm gonna do this or that, and then, like, by saying that, then you're doing it.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, you just kind of like say it, and then you start walking that path, and then you do, and then before too long you look behind you and you're like, it's done. And I felt like I wasn't doing that to the best of my ability before I met you. I was maybe getting a little complacent, just, doing a little bit the same old. Wasn't really driving in any particular direction. And I don't have to be driving at 100 miles per hour, but I like to be at least moving somewhere.
Yeah.
Going towards something keeps things exciting.
We kind of met at an interesting time, and very good timing for both of us, I think, because you were definitely, as you just said, you kind of were settling into something that you weren't entirely overly excited about, and we're just kind of getting used to the way things are. And I don't even know what I was doing, just trying to do everything and find justification and whatever through going a million miles an hour and compensating for whatever I felt like I was lacking. And enter you, and you kind of helped me understand that you don't have to go at 100 miles an hour to still make progress, and that sometimes putting it in neutral while you're going down the hill is an okay thing to do, and that you're still gaining momentum when you're doing that.
Yeah, I think that goes along with the creative well. Like, it can kind of dry up if you're driving on something so hard. Sometimes walking away, coming back to it, look at it again, you see it better, you see it clearer for what it needs to be, and you kind of go slow to go fast. I hate redoing things. So I want, if we're going to put our attention on whatever it is, whether it be a job that's right in front of us, or a long-term goal, like, do it right the first way, so that way you don't have to go back. That way the foundation is solid, it lasts for a long time, or it's built on good quality, and you get everything that you want it to be out of it, you know? Yeah, so that sometimes can be, if you're just wanting it today or going a little too fast, sometimes you can get it done really fast, but it maybe it's not as solid as you want it to be. So I don't know, I do that with a lot of things. I just try to spend all the time, give it the extra 3 seconds sometimes.
It makes a difference.
Yeah,
it really does. So you had mentioned that one of the things that you enjoy having your career the way that it is so that you can do things, you can experience life, and you can travel. And you have been doing quite a bit of traveling lately. We've gotten our passports, and we've gone to Europe a couple of times. And even prior to that, you've kind of always gone around and visited places and done things. First, what is your favorite place that you've been to so far, and why? And then secondly, how do you feel that your experience in traveling and seeing different places and experiencing different cultures has expanded and shaped your perspective on where we live and how we experience life? Big two-parter there.
Yeah, big two-parter. Credit to you. Probably wouldn't have traveled and done as much as I have without you. You have a way of saying, let's go to UP, Michigan. And I'm like, okay. Figure out a way in which we can do that, and like a time, and then I will be along for the trip. And you have a great talent of like making it happen. Like, one thing that I am not good at is going online and finding a hotel or something like that. It just does not go my way.
I love
I've
to do
become
it.
frustrated easily in the fact that my technology works against me much of the time. So you have made it easier in that way. We've definitely taken some trips that I wouldn't have taken otherwise. But before that, I had taken some good trips. I hadn't really traveled anywhere that I would consider breathtakingly beautiful until I was maybe 19 or 20. And we took a cross-country trip and drove through, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas is where I was like, okay, we're starting to get a little bit of geography here. In New Mexico, and then we're starting in New Mexico and all the way into Arizona and kind of down through that area. I was like, wow, real mountains, like mountain fresh pine tree air, like canyons and clear waterfalls, things that I'd only seen in movies, and just breathing it in. I was like, wow, what is to me, it was like a magic, because I've literally only ever been to maybe the Smoky Mountains, once or twice, pretty small, pretty, but just kind of a different landscape for sure. And most of my life has been spent just kind of going up and down Route 41 or Highway 41 in Indiana. Lots of flat, lots of cornfields. So it made a huge impression on me. It wasn't long after that, a bunch of friends and I went to Colorado for the first time, went to Colorado Springs, Pikes Peak, and things like that. It was brilliant. We just loved it so much. And yeah, came back very inspired, having lived some of that stuff, just in all kinds of ways. I wanted more of that, I wanted to move there. I wanted to jump ship and experience that all the time. Haven't made it so far, but yeah, that'd be cool. And we went to UP. Beautiful, way more beautiful than I even kind of imagined it would be. I didn't know how crazy cool it is up there.
Me neither. That was kind of during COVID. It was June of 2020.
It's the first time we were ever allowed to go anywhere. And there's very few people up there at that point, so it was a good trip to go, and you didn't have to be near others.
We were some of the first people that they had seen in 9 months, probably, because their season ended last year, and then COVID happened, and the lockdown happened, and then...
Yeah, it was cool. It's just, I don't know, I like going up there where there's not that many people, and sometimes you have the forest or the beach to yourself, and you're seeing the power and the majesty of Lake Superior. I mean, it's epic.
It really is.
Absolutely. I had been to Florida, pretty place. So, I mean, that was a lot of kind of seeing the country. There's many places I want to still go within the United States. And I, kind of loved all of that. And it, we haven't been out of the country that many times. That was my first time out of the country a couple of years ago. Was it 2020?
It was December 23.
23? Mm-hmm. We went to Paris for Christmas.
Yeah. And
that just, I think of Home Alone. His family goes to Paris for Christmas. And they have a terrible time. But it just seemed to me what a romantic thing to do. So we did that, and it was great.
It was so great. I got so sick that trip, though.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, with the flu, something like that.
24-hour flu, and then it was Christmas Eve, and all the government-owned pharmacies closed early, and so all I had was an expired French allergy pill and a crazy, just fever dream situation in that sweaty, moist Airbnb apartment thing that we stayed at.
It was a good first trip because it wasn't perfect, right?
We learned a lot.
There were a number of missteps along that trip. We continued on to Florence, where we, almost drove into the city center where there's no cars allowed. Was St. Thomas Day that we were unaware of. Car reservations getting canceled on us at
midnight.
Just a lonely light in the dark parking lot. This one nice Italian man who gave us this little Renault car to drive up this dark mountain.
Unreal.
These Italian streets.
On Christmas.
So cool. And, so many great times too. And then like getting to Rome, we continued on to Rome and just we're in the sketchiest part of the city ever. So like I felt like it was a true adventure because a true adventure needs a little bit of peril.
It was an epic for sure.
Yeah. And then, so it was a great time regardless. And then we're so lucky, to be able to return. And it's once again, it's like, pointing your compass in the right direction, saying like, this is something that we want to do. So we're going to do that. And we just find a cheap flight. We're like, we can afford this flight. Never mind all the other parts of this vacation. And
we'll figure that out.
We'll get it. And then all of a sudden we have a plane ticket and we're like, okay, I guess we're going.
Well, that's the key. That's what you have to do. You have to buy a non-refundable ticket in a way that kind of forces your hand. We booked a round trip flight to Paris, but that was not the first flight that I booked. It was actually the round trip ticket from Paris to Greece.
Yeah, that was first.
And that was the first thing that I booked. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cheap. We have to get it. And I was like, well, I guess we're going to Greece and we'll figure out the rest. It was June that we went, and I think I booked that. It was like September of last year, I think, or October that I had bought that first ticket. And then it wasn't until it was like February when we booked the Paris flight, and then kind of the rest of it we just kind of filled in the blanks. And that's what you got to do. You got to kind of think outside the box to get it done, because we are not, we're not flying business class or anything like that. That's for sure. Yeah. But you can definitely, you can really do well on international travel if you're just a little thoughtful about it and take the time.
Well, that's your skill. I couldn't have done that. And a lot of people want to book like, okay, we're going to bundle it all together, all the different hotels and cars and all the little stuff that you need. Just bundle it all together.
Don't do it. A la carte it all the way.
And, if I was a la carting it all the way, I would get overwhelmed. I would forget something. I would mess something up. But you have the good skill of kind of connecting the dots and making sure that it all makes sense. And on this second trip, hardly a misstep, No,
it was like really smooth.
Pretty smooth.
Great. Excellent time.
Which can be really stressful, especially when everything's in Greek.
Well, and then when we were coming home, we had just barely missed peril multiple times. The Eiffel Tower closed, the Louvre closed, there was power outages, there were transportation strikes, there were all this, that, and the next thing, and earthquakes in Greece, and we were just narrowly missing all of it, and it was kind of amazing.
So a little bit of luck as well.
I would say. Well earned.
So, most beautiful place, really hard. I'm a sucker for mountains. Mm-hmm. And in France, in Italy, there was a little bit. In Greece, there were some. I gotta say, most beautiful place has to be Rocky Mountain National Park. Mm-hmm. Because you and I were there. There's this other time I was there, and we picked a good trail. The trail was 3 lakes. I think I remember them. I don't know if I'm going to get them in order. Emerald Lake, Nymph Lake, and maybe Crystal Lake.
Colorado folks, if you're listening, help fact check this man.
And Bear Lake is right there too. Bear Lake, Nymph Lake, Emerald Lake. Something along those lines.
In that realm.
Each one a little higher than the next. You kind of hike up to the next lake. You hike up to the next lake. Each one very well maintained by the park. No litter, no garbage, and just pristine blue lakes. And then the third one, this was June, I think, when we were up there. And there was some snow. Mm-hmm. But like that mountain Colorado air, it was like you could be standing in a t-shirt and not be cold.
Yes.
And there were tons of little woodland creatures everywhere, all these birds, all these little gophers and squirrels and chipmunks, and we're just up on this very high mountain on this lake that just has some ice crystals on it, and I was like, wow. It was like a little bit of a feeling,
right? That
the second time we went to a different entrance, a good trip and some great scenery there too, a little bit of a misadventure and you breaking your foot 7 miles out.
That
or
was
so.
fun. Yeah, going 5 or 6 miles on a broken foot with a very exhausted 7-year-old or 8-year-old, however old she was.
And very scary because the only way out of there is horseback.
Yeah,
if you're
I
injured.
said, nope, you are not going to leave me here to
right.
ride out on a horse. That is so embarrassing. I'm walking.
So, I mean, I got to go with that as most pretty for me. In various places in Colorado, I've been just breathtaking by the diversity of the geography. It's not quite as deserty. The pine trees. It's so green. Colorado.
Yeah.
Gorgeous, gorgeous place.
I love it there too. It's so pretty.
I love, of course, traveling all places and experiencing all that there is. But as far as just pure scenery, wow.
So you were, tying back to the beginning of the conversation, talking about your upbringing in the Witnesses and kind of having the concept of, not pledging allegiance to any government. That's kind of a big piece of that lifestyle, and being non-political and kind of against all of that stuff, and then going out of the country and experiencing France, Italy, Greece, and just the culture and the way of life and all of that there, and then coming home. What is your overall just kind of thought on all of that and just kind of the way that we are sometimes as an American culture, and kind of where you find yourself thinking about that and kind of your opinions?
Well, it's a little easier at this point, just recognizing in the ways in which we are American. It's easier to see the American way versus other ways that other countries kind of go about daily things. And that just only gives me more perspective, I'm kind of a believer in, like, the more you learn, the better. Doesn't matter what it is. Like, learning something new rarely can do you harm. Just kind of increases your horizon just that much more each time. I learned that there's some things that I don't necessarily prefer. I like the way the Europeans do certain things. I like their quality of food and their laws surrounding things you grow and things you eat. The ways in which they're procured, we'll call it. There's a lot of history to everything. I instantly think of, like, World War II and how America kind of prospered and other places kind of struggled, and there's a reason why things are the way they are and how they came to be such a way. But I don't know. I think all in all, I always consider myself citizen of the world. This is another, maybe you could call it childish, because I remember being a kid and coming up with some of these ideas and expressing them to other people, and they're like, "No, Joe, that would never work. That's not the way anything works, Joe." I remember in 7th grade talking about, like, we don't need money, man. Money's a construct. What about a world without money, right?
And without borders.
And that I was going to get to that next, and there's Imagine, John Lennon, Imagine there's no countries. And I'm like, yeah. And I know it's like sounds maybe communist, but, like I said, non-dogmatic in all things. But I don't have a lot of use for borders, I don't think. Why? There's so much inequity in so much of the world, I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard that there's enough food to feed everyone. It's just very much not allocated
appropriately
the same. I remember the COVID vaccine kind of being that way. All of a sudden America got tons of supply, and the whole continent of Africa was like, struggling. Just the allocation of things. And I think, borders have a lot to do with that. I'm sure it would be horrible consequences of getting rid of all that in practice. Right. And I'm sure, I'm not naive enough to think that would ever be a workable system. And I just think that that's unfortunate. that sucks.
Right. But I do think that you can integrate that thought into the way that things are by just treating people equally and with the same level of kindness that you would your neighbor.
Right.
Regardless of whether they're from Guatemala or from Israel or America or wherever.
So we call that nationalism, right?
Right.
And I don't like it. I don't have a lot of that, because I think each place, each culture has probably its beautiful parts and the parts that are not as great. But that's not. I try not to go into other places or meet other people with too much preconception about like the way they are or things like that. And maybe that kind of goes along with being brought up as a witness and other people kind of looking at me like, oh, that's the way they are, or all of them are like this, or that's crazy to be brought up like that. So, people from all kinds of places, right? And I know we're kind of getting close, but there's these little memes that are going on right now of a view from Saturn, and it's staring at the world, and it's got a little caption that says, "Oh, my country's the best one." And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of silly, I much more prefer the Saganist, Carl Sagan view, the pale blue dot. Every supreme being, everything has taken place on the pale blue dot, and there's a big cosmic perspective out there.
Exactly.
So don't be walking so tall all the time. You don't have to step on other people's existence in order to make yourself feel good. So I'd like to be modest in that, meek, if you want to call that, respectful to others.
One thing I found very interesting is when we were in Europe, obviously everywhere you go, every person is going to have a love for their country, and they're going to have, that pride in where they're from, regionally, nationally, whatever. And here in America, we love to be American, and we are like really big on that. And then you go to France, where people have a serious passion and love for their country. But I didn't see a French flag in everybody's yard or on everybody's, French swimsuits and all of these it just feels. I didn't realize how excessive it was here until we left and then came back and were immediately inundated by gigantic American flags everywhere. And I was like, it feels like a bit much.
Yeah, that it's okay to have pride for your region or your place. And not anything against anybody who does that stuff, but I think everything within taste. There's a way to overcook it a little bit.
Yeah, this is more of less of a judgment and more of an observation.
Sure,
to preface
and
that.
that's part of the nationalistic pride. I'm just not like huge fan of it unless there's something that you're trying to say with that.
Right.
I think everybody. I feel like Jeremy Clarkson, if you're familiar, has a good, healthy perspective on it. Very nationalist, proud of his country in England, but sees where other countries are also good and where they kind of have their moment to shine too. And
there is no perfect system.
Yeah, it's all good. There's not anything to hang your whole identity on.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I'd leave it there.
And I would encourage anyone who is here or is listening to get out there and travel, find a way. And if you need some help, come and hit me up and I will teach you how to find the greatest deals in the world. Because I want you to see the world too.
Man, you might have a lot of emails now.
Oh man, yeah. The Hannah Villani travel agency. Villani's Villas.
There you go.
Well, that just about does it. It is 8 p.m., so I'm going to wrap up this fun, intricate, interesting show. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. Where can they find you?
Thanks for having me. Very fun. Already an hour gone by so fast. You can check me out, sergijoe.com.
Is that it? Sergijoe.com?
Yeah, and all the social media. So, Sergijoe on Facebook and Instagram as well. And there's Sergijoe Artworks for that, and Sergijoe Guitar for that. Sergijoe Music and Artworks on Facebook. Sergijoe.com, which has music and artworks. Just type it in, and I'm sure you'll find me if if you want to see or hear anything that I'm doing. So thank you.
Well, definitely go check them out. Support local artists, support local musicians, and travel the world. And thank you for tuning into Conversations. This is Hannah Villani on 103.1 WVLP. Good night.